Alright, hi guys. Today I'm going to be giving you guys my presentation over my leadership training that I'll be giving to my staff whenever I am a head or an assistant coach. I'm just going to go through my scenario and just some of the things that I thought would be important in a leadership training. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to talk a little bit about me and who I am and what I'm doing. So I'm an assistant coach at MSU in Billings, which is Montana State University in Billings. It is a Division II women's soccer program, and my job is I'm the head of leadership training, which is why we're going through this course in the first place. But one of my other main jobs as the assistant is I work with the goalkeepers as well. So that's just a little bit of a fun fact about me is I'm a goalkeeper specific coach. So outside of leadership and outside of helping you guys with this type of training, I'm also a goalkeeper specific coach. So that's just a little bit about me. So my goals for you guys today and what I want you guys to get out of this presentation is I want you guys to learn some useful leadership skills. Things like conflict resolution, communication skills, how we can improve our team's performance, how we can motivate not only our coworkers but like our athletes. And I want to teach you guys a little bit about resilience. And then I want you guys to also walk away with a better understanding of what it means to be a leader and how good leaders lead. And then lastly and most importantly, I want you to take all of these things that I'm teaching, all these skills, all these concepts, all of these tactics, and I want you to be able to take what you've learned today and translate it into becoming a leader for your athletes. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is something that's really important skill for a leader to have, which is conflict resolution. And I just have a couple of ways that we can resolve conflict. And so one of the first ways that you can resolve conflict as a leader is through negotiation. I believe very strongly that a lot of good leaders possess good negotiation skills, because if you are able to talk to somebody and find some common ground between the two of you, you're a lot more likely to succeed, because you are able to find it's like compromising. You know, it's a bit of a give and take. And so negotiation is extremely important when it comes to resolving conflicts between, coworkers, between athletes, between parents, between other coaches or other coaching staffs or other athletes, and other teams. So it's just something that you should always have in your back pocket. Another way that you can resolve conflict is you could bring in a third party. If you're having a one-on-one conversation with an athlete and you guys are butting heads, you're disagreeing, you could bring in your other assistant coach, you could bring in another head coach, and you can sit there and you can have a little meeting, a little discussion, so where that third party can be like, hey, you're wrong here, but you're right here, or you're right here, but you're wrong here, or you both are wrong here, here's a different solution. So bringing in a third party is also something that you can consider whenever you're trying to come up with solutions for problems. Another thing that I think is very underrated is just pure physical separation. If you take time, as opposed to letting your emotions control you and control your decisions, control your reactions, if you take a little bit of space from that conflict, from that person, and then you come back, a day, an hour, a minute, a week later, you can have a more clear, level-headed conversation. And I think this one is also very underrated, because a lot of people are quick to react. Something happens, you're butting heads with somebody, and you immediately just react. You don't take time to think, you just react. And so I think as a leader, it is extremely important that you have that ability to take a step back, separate yourself for a minute, and then come back and have that conversation when you're ready, or when the other person is ready. And last but not least is having rules and regulations. They're here for a reason. Rules are here for a reason. So if you have an athlete who has broken the rules and there is a specific punishment for the rule, you must go through with that punishment. If you have these rules, you set aside these rules, you have to ensure that your athletes and even your coaching staff are following them as best as they possibly can. So the next thing that I believe is important for a leader is communication. I think everyone could probably agree with me here when it comes to communication. It is extremely important that you are able to communicate, not like with your athletes, with your bosses, with your coworkers, with your employees, with everybody. And so I have a few points on here, 4 key points when it comes to communication: open, honest, consistent, and meaningful. So what I mean when I say open communication: be transparent with people. Be transparent with your athletes, with your coworkers, with your bosses. Don't sit there and try and hide the truth. You want to make sure that you are giving, so that when people are speaking with you, they know that you are always being open and honest, and that you're not going to sit there and lie. Like, you are trying to build yourself into a trustworthy person. That's what I mean by open and honest. What I mean by consistent: I was told this quote once by one of my professors: what you permit, you promote. So for one athlete, if they're late and you're like, oh no, it's okay, just this one time, you're showing other athletes that it's okay that they can show up late and there's not going to be any repercussions. So if athlete A is late, no punishment, and then athlete B is late and then they get punished, well, then the rest of the team is like, well, why didn't athlete A get punished? Why only athlete B? So you have to make sure that when you are doing literally anything, you must be consistent. And then lastly, meaningful. Don't just be, spitting out meaningless things. Like, whenever you're having conversations with people, you have to ensure that it is meaningful and it's useful. You don't want to give people information that they can't use. And so just whenever you are trying to be communicative, just make sure that what you're saying has some sort of meaning. So this I learned from my autobiography that I read over the last couple weeks, and that is resilience. I learned this from Nelson Mandela and the book that I read about him, and I thought that this was a really important skill that leaders really need to have, because if you aren't resilient, you will not succeed. And so I have 3 points on here. The first one is never give up even when it's hard. I learned that from that book that I read, A Long Walk to Freedom. Nelson Mandela went through a lot, and his life was very hard, but he was very, very, very resilient. And because of this resilience, because of his toughness, because of his fight, he was able to succeed, and he was a great leader for this reason. Another point that I said is rely on others, especially your most trusted coworkers. When things get hard, you need people around you, especially as a leader. You need people under you, need people beside you, need people who can sit there and pick you up when you're down. And that's what I mean by resilience, is things are gonna get hard. And when they get hard, you need to have that ability to lean on others, trust in others, and help, have them build you up as you're building them up. And then the last point that I made is inspire others in times of hardships. And what I mean by this is when these things get tough, you might get down and you might lean on others, but you also have to be the person that steps up. When you see that your team is down, after a tough loss or something, you have to be that leader that steps up and says, hey, we got the next one, or hey, it's okay, we fought hard. You kind of have to find the positive things that come out of a negative situation. And that's what it means to be resilient. The next thing I'm going to talk about is trust and respect. In order to be a good leader, you need trust and you need respect. If you don't have trust and if you don't have respect, you're not a good leader. And even the best leaders have to work hard for these 2 things. And so the first thing that I put on here was honesty. Obviously, you need honesty. That's how you build trust. Is if you are open and if you're honest and if you are communicative with your athletes, with your coworkers, you're more than likely going to start building up trust. And with trust comes respect. Because if you are being consistent, like what I said earlier, what you permit, you promote. If you are being honest and consistent, you are showing others the type of person that you are. And in being that type of person, that comes into my next thing, which is integrity. And out of this entire class, what I learned the most was how important integrity is. Integrity is who you are as a person, and I think that out of all of the characteristics that I've learned about, integrity is the absolute most important. Because integrity is what drives you as a person. Integrity is what drives your action, it drives your motives. And if you are pure with your integrity, if you're pure with your intentions, if you're pure with your honesty, trust and respect comes naturally and comes super easy. So, in my personal opinion, things that you really want to focus on and the thing that you want to put most of your effort into is learning integrity. So, one of the last things that I'm going to talk about to you guys is how to motivate others. In a position of leadership, motivation is incredibly important because people are looking to you to get things done. People are looking to you in order to get better, to grow, to become a better athlete, to become a better coach, to become a better person. As a leader, you are the one that is motivating others. So, some things that I came up with in motivation, some things you can work on and think about is, the first thing is to create goals. As a leader, you should get with your athlete, you should get with your staffs, and you should come up with a handful of short-term goals, you should come up with a handful of midterm goals, and you should come up with a handful of long-term goals. And I recommend having one-on-one conversations with all of your athletes and coming up with personal goals for them, because if you sit down and if you set goals, individual goals for your athletes, they will look up to you, they will trust you, and they will have something to look forward to work towards. And that's one of the most important things in motivation is coming up with goals. Because if you have something you're working towards, you're already more intrinsically motivated to do better, to get better. So another thing that I said was positivity. You want to show up every single day with a positive attitude. And I wrote, positivity is infectious. Even when you might be having the worst day in the world, if you show up with a smile on your face, I promise you, you will automatically lift up the energy of anybody else who might be having a bad day. If you can just show up and be consistent with your mood, consistent with your positivity, consistent with who you are as a person, who you are as a coach, who you are as a leader, you are about 10 or 20 times more likely to lift up others around you. And that's how you become a good leader, because as a leader, it is your job to lift people up. It is your job to motivate them. It is your job to be that person that gets things done for everybody. And so another thing, I mentioned respect again, but in this sense, give respect to others. If you're giving respect, you are more likely to receive respect in return. If you are respectful with an athlete when things are going wrong, they're more likely to listen and to respect you back as a leader. And then the last thing I talked about was guidance. As a leader, guidance is super important because, as I've been saying, it is our jobs as leaders to help our athletes, help our coaches get better in any way, shape, or form. And so whenever you are given the opportunity, you want to provide meaningful feedback, but only when it's necessary. You don't want to over critique. It's like in weight training. You don't want to correct someone's form after every single rep or after every single set. Let them figure it out, but when they need correction, correct them, but do it respectfully. All right, so that is the end of my presentation. And so just as a refresher, as a summary, it is our job as coaches and leaders to lead change. We need to be guiding and supporting others. We need to be a role model, especially for our athletes because they look up to us. And lastly, we need to inspire others to lead and improve. Not only are we leaders ourselves, but we are also creating leaders. It's our job to teach. It's our job to lead. It's our job to help others improve into better leaders. And so that is the end of my presentation. I would say if you guys have any questions or anything for me, you could put them in my comments or something like that. And then here are my references. I mentioned earlier, I used my book that I read, A Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, I definitely recommend that read. It's an amazing read and it taught me a lot. And then I also did a little bit of research on my own, which is what this one is. It kind of helped give me an idea of which direction I wanted to take my presentation in. And then lastly, I used SkyPack. That's where I got a lot of my conflict resolution information. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for taking the time to go through this presentation with me, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.